shall we have John come up to help us along with the
John's our artistic administrator.
Point at hand. Welcome, John. So I'll pass it over to John. One thing we agreed that we are not going to do is recite the materials that you have in your folders. All that information is there, but we will somewhat randomly, but with wherever our enthusiasm and inspiration takes us, point out some things that get us excited.
Well, I know one of the things that I'm excited about is the orchestra's continuing focus on the music of Gustav Mahler. And we actually open the season on subscription next year with Mahler's Second Symphony. And this is one of the kind of big pieces that you're doing next season, Alan. And I was just wondering, if you wanted to talk a little bit about how it was that you made the decision to do Mahler, and then at the close of the season, the Mozart Mass in C minor, and some of the other major pieces from the repertoire that you'll be working on with the orchestra during the year.
Sure. Well, anytime I get to do the great masterpieces in the orchestral repertoire, it's a pleasure, it's an inspiration, it's a challenge. And as I was reviewing our programs for next year, it was really striking to me how many of these icons of the symphonic repertoire we're hitting. It starts, as you say, with the Second Symphony of Mahler, the Resurrection, and it's never a straight line to coming up with the programs, but we did early on have the idea of starting with a major symphonic work that includes voices, and concluding the season with another major symphonic work that includes voices. So we're ending with the Mozart Great Mass in C minor. Obviously, Mahler has a very special place in this orchestra's history and psyche, and I can remember many performances of the Second Symphony of Mahler that were formative for me, with Leonard Bernstein, with Zubin Mehta, and I think coming right around the time of the 10th anniversary of 9/11, I think that's going to be a telling kind of piece for New York City.
And then some of the other things that I know you were keen to do, especially. I mean, it's interesting to have conversations about programming with you, because it always starts from exactly what Alan just said, which is what are the great pieces that the orchestra should be playing? What are the pieces we really believe in? And another thing that we landed on was wanting to do Dvorak's symphony, particularly Dvorak's Seventh Symphony.
I haven't done a Dvorak symphony, I think, or did I do the Sixth? It's been, so many seasons go through.
No, no
not
Dvorak
the Sixth.
yet.
Yeah, well, I did it someplace else. But this, yeah, Cleveland. Thanks. Hey, Albert.
Where's that?
Cleveland is where I ended up on my last trip back from Europe when I was trying to get to New York, but that's another story. Yeah, Dvorak's Seventh Symphony, one of the great symphonies of Dvorak. But it's just one of many. I'm many things I'm still doing for the first time, despite what Zarin said earlier about wanting to come back to things already. But we have Brahms' Third Symphony coming up. We have Prokofiev Fifth Symphony, the Stravinsky Symphony in 3 movements, Tchaikovsky 4, which we're going to be taking on tour. The challenge and the thrill of doing this repertoire with the orchestra is that they know it so well, and that can cut both ways. They bring a lot to the table, but the task for me is to continue to make it fresh. And the thing that I can really use, and that's so exciting for me, is there's such a willingness, not just a willingness, but an eagerness and an assumption made by the orchestra that they are going to treat things in a fresh way and in a new way. So that's why it's possible for us to continue to do these concerts and have them be so meaningful for audiences, because these are great works of art that can, as I like to say, withstand interpretation.
And then alongside these great works, we have some new commissions as well during the season, as we should. Not only from our composer in residence, Magnus Lindberg, but also from 3 other composers, John Corigliano, Thomas Adès, and Marc Neikrug. And it's interesting when you were talking about the Mahler too, that you mentioned the connection to 9/11, because this was also the starting point for the piece that John has actually written for us already, and that we'll be performing during the second week of the season, along with the Dvorak 7.
Well, there's no particular reason to consider Dvorak as an American composer, but he did have a strong influence from his years in America, and that was, I remember, brought up. It wasn't necessarily the main impetus behind the connection, but somehow it made sense to look for an appropriate American composer to commission around this time. And John's music has always meant a lot to me. He's a real American storyteller, and I'll never forget his opera at the Met, The Ghost of Versailles, and so many other pieces that he's written that I think really are part of the symphonic landscape. He really is an important force in music today. And so we asked him if he would be interested and find the topic inspiring to write a piece around the 10th anniversary of 9/11, and he's admirably choosy about his subjects of inspiration, and this really spoke to him, and I was very pleased that he agreed to write this piece, and I think, I'm looking forward to hearing what it sounds like.
Yeah, me too. Then another thing that I wanted to touch on with you was the opening of the season. In addition to the Mahler and the Corigliano and Dvorak program, we also have a wonderful opening night with Deborah Voigt, and this is just one of the many amazing soloists that Alan collaborates with over the course of the year. And just, your thoughts on how we've put that program together, and, asking her to do Barber and Wagner and Strauss over the course of an evening.
Well, Debbie's one of the artists I love and admire the most today on today's stage. She's first of all, such a great singer, but such a great personality, and she's beloved by audiences, and for good reason. The thread that ties this program together is Debbie, and she's, I think, going to be able to show her tremendous range and her tremendous communicative powers with the music of Barber and Wagner. Tannhäuser she'll be singing, and finally Strauss, the final scene of Salome. It's both a great platform for her to shine, but also it's a total orchestral knockout.
So that's the opening of the season. But at the end of the season, we have another amazing event planned, really. And this all started with a visit that a group of us paid to the Park Avenue Armory earlier last year. And an idea kind of came out of that. And I want to let Alan talk about it, because it's really something that I know you feel strongly about and you're really excited about.
Well, for those of you who have been there, you know already that the Armory is a unique space in New York City. And I know, Zarin, you wanted to recognize Rebecca. Why don't you just step in?
The president and executive producer, excuse me, Rebecca Robertson is with us. And Rebecca's an old friend from the time when she ran the redevelopment process at Lincoln Center, and she's taken over and made the Armory into quite an extraordinary space. And she invited us to visit, and we came up with this idea of how do we use this huge drill hall. And we've been working with Rebecca and her staff in creating something. You mentioned Gruppen. I think you should talk about more. But Rebecca, I do think you should take a bow, because you've been terrific in welcoming us. And I think, this is part of the thing that is wonderful, to be able to cooperate and collaborate with other institutions in the city. I mean, Alan is so very involved now with Juilliard, more and more. This is, I hope, just the first of many things that we will do on a regular basis at the Armory. It's an extraordinary space, and it gives rise to ideas, and I think that's what's important.
Well, the thing that's so exciting to me about the Armory is that it's a kind of blank slate. It's a physical space that really can be imagined in an infinite number of ways. And what we thought about, I mean, it's this amazing place. It's this cavernous space, and it's amazing that such a building exists in New York City. But very simply, what suggested itself to me by this space was space. And we've come up with a program that is built around the spatial qualities in music. Stockhausen's Gruppen, which was a landmark work, is written for 3 orchestras playing at the same time. And you need a place like this too. I mean, you can't do it in a traditional concert hall. But we started brainstorming other pieces that involve or that are built on this idea of physical spatial relationships. And we've come up with what I think is a very exciting program. It starts with a piece by Pierre Boulez, one of my favorite pieces of his, called Rituel, which has 8 satellite groups that play around a space. Then, kind of unexpectedly, but I think really importantly, we turn to Mozart, not the first person many people would think of when it comes to this concept, but think about the party scene in Don Giovanni, where there are 3 orchestras playing at the same time. So we're actually going to do a staged presentation of this scene with the 3 orchestras playing at the party. You can imagine a large club with different bands playing in different rooms. That's what Mozart was writing, and he actually wrote music that works perfectly together, as well as the pit orchestra. We'll play Gruppen after intermission, then immediately follow that with Charles Ives' Unanswered Question, which is open to many different approaches spatially, but it is about different groups of instruments placed in different places, and for me, that's one of the great American masterpieces.
No, and it was inspiring to visit
I was
this
going to say,
space,
hopefully, antiphonal music as well.
Oh yeah, we were also thinking of welcoming people to the hall with Gabriele Canzone or something like that. Anyway, there was a long list of pieces that we didn't get to, but Rebecca, maybe we'll make this an ongoing project.
Good.
Good. So
No other ideas? I wanted to mention one thing. We talked about the unusual program of Magnus's piece with the Missa Solemnis. Next year we have a premiere of Thomas Adès, which is also being paired with something unusual, to have a contemporary piece, a premiere of Polaris of Thomas Adès, and then the Mahler Ninth, which is also something one doesn't normally look at. Mahler Ninth stands on its own usually.
Yeah, well, Mahler 9, first of all, lengthwise, but also in terms of emotional and intellectual content, doesn't need anything, but can be supported and buttressed and enhanced, I think, by other music. But it has to be the right composer. Many of you might have heard Tom's piece that we did recently, in 7 days, that also is a multimedia work, and the videographer Tal Rosner has done the visuals for this coming piece as well. It was really very powerful, and Tom is one of the contemporary composers who I think really successfully marries his craft with a very deep human message, and it's for that reason that I thought of pairing his new work Polaris with Mahler 9. It's recently been given its premiere in Miami, and from what I've heard,
I heard it last week, yeah.
Another masterpiece.
It's funny, we could talk about spatial music, the new hall in Miami, I'm sure you read about it. Tony Tomasini wrote a lot about it, with sort of 4 satellite spaces, but you couldn't do Gruppen there because they're too small. You can do chamber music in these spaces, but not something like Gruppen. Maybe Rituel could be done there.
That'd be
Well, the
perfect-
Polaris
perfect
worked
place
beautifully.
for Rituel, yeah.
Good.
Yeah. I think you can consult your lists of other things we're doing, and we'll be able to take questions later, but maybe we move on to the next
I
chapter.
did want to, Gary talked about Credit Suisse. Antonio Quintella is here from Credit Suisse. As he said, we are so delighted with this continuing relationship we have as a global sponsor. We had a 3-year contract, which we are delighted to say we renewed, which was announced. And Antonio has just moved here from Sao Paulo, Brazil, with his family, and is going to join our board. So I would like him to come up and be known to people in New York.
Thank you very much. It's great to be in New York. I spent the last 15 years with Credit Suisse in Brazil, and I'm really pleased to be able to represent Credit Suisse's sole global sponsor. of the,
Not as pleased as we are.
Philharmonic. But like many music lovers around the world, I've obviously admired the New York Philharmonic for its quality and excellence. And obviously, I'm delighted to be now living in New York. Our commitment to the arts goes back to our 150 years of history, and we're really, really proud to be associated with a cultural institutions that shares a lot of our values, as Gary said, quality being one of them. We joined the Philharmonic in 2007, and we have since obviously joined you here, but also in Europe. I think it's the 4th time we go to Europe. I believe in this next season, we're visiting Switzerland, Austria, and Germany. And we're really delighted that the audiences there will be able to appreciate your talent and the talent of the orchestra's musicians. So we really feel great about that partnership. And I think the values that we share are really explain the success of this partnership, which we hope will continue for many more years. But
what is very important to me personally is the fact that when we go to all these cities, whether it's Singapore or Frankfurt or Zurich, the people who represent Credit Suisse, and I'm not just saying this, they're genuinely interested in music and what we do, and they're enthusiastic, and they're thrilled with the fact that they're associated with us. We like banking with them, and they like coming to our concerts. What could be better?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.